Robert Clark was born in Newcastle, Indiana on September 13, 1928. He was adopted as an infant and spent most of his childhood traveling around the state of Indiana. Robert's artistic talent was discovered by a first-grade teacher who encouraged him to pursue his love of art. In high school, Robert moved to Indianapolis to enroll at Arsenal Technical High School because it used well-known art curriculum. After spending 3 years in the Air Force, Robert did an extensive amount of art studies. Let's get a picture. Which included the Art Institute of Chicago, the Skowhegan School of Sculpture and Painting in Maine, and the Edinburgh College of Art in Scotland. After a few years of living in New York and meeting a group of artists he became close with, Robert made his first big art piece, a 19-foot mural, Stavrosis. After this work was complete, in 1958, he changed his name to how he was now known as Robert Indiana. By 1960, Indiana was being featured in influential New York art shows for his art, Jeanne d'Arc, and Wall of China. The 60s were an exciting and successful time in Indiana's life, but he hit a revolutionary point in his career with the exploding success of Love, which was inspired by his Christian Science upbringing. Indiana created many paintings and sculptures through the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, but none that have surpassed the popularity of the simple yet powerful love sculpture. Indiana has been featured all over the world and has permanent locations at renowned art museums all across the world. Robert Indiana is generally associated with the pop culture and the pop art movement. This art was defined by its use of incorporating imagery from popular and mass culture. Some of the most famous pop artists are Eduardo Pelosi, Richard Hamilton, Larry Rivers, Jasper Johns, and a man by the name of Andy Warhol, who is famous for creating art like this, that he used the tomato soup labeling in 1964. Indiana liked his art deceptively simple. A lot of his work came across as uncomplicated, but had a lot of meaning behind the simplicity. Indiana was known for being socially engaged and political. A popular Indiana quote is, "I have always thought of my work as being celebratory. Let's say it's the 3 C's, commemorative, celebratory, and colorful." So I thought we'd look at some of his most famous pieces. We'll start with one. It's called The Hole, a free-standing wooden sculpture. It was built from scraps of wood and metal found in abandoned warehouses. And this is from the time period where he lived in New York, and he had met the group of artists, and they would find a lot of the pieces that they would use for their projects in abandoned warehouses and the shipyards. I thought that was really interesting. And then the next piece I will show you is, this is his, the first in his American Dream series. And this piece is thought to be a mixture of personal and pop culture symbolism, and was the first of many in this American Dream collection. And the next piece is, this one I think was my favorite. The Green Diamond Eat, Red Diamond Die. The red and green coloring was representative of the sign that his father's company that he worked for many years. And the last thing that his mother said to him before her death was, "Make sure that you eat." And this painting to Indiana represented both of his parents. And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about his most famous piece, which was the love piece. He received a lot of attention for this piece from the art world and from the mainstream public. He created a version of Love for the Museum of Modern Art's Christmas card in 1965, and he also made a postage stamp that was created in, they did a postage stamp with this in 73. Due to the simplicity of Indiana's work, he has dealt with being called a sellout through a lot of his career. Most of his most famous work was for the words love, eat, and hope, and he used very personal touches of meaning behind these words. For example, the eat held symbolism of his mother, who worked at the roadside diners and whose last words to him were, "Make sure you eat." Sadly, since Indiana at first chose not to patent his design, it was ripped off countless times, and Indiana made very little money. Love was his last hugely popular piece for close to the next 30 years. Indiana moved away from New York and worked, living mostly in isolation on a small island off the town on the coast of Maine. And he came out of artistic isolation in 2008 with Hope that he created for Barack Obama's campaign in 2008. And he gave all of the proceeds to Barack Obama's campaign that ended up totaling over $1 million. And then also his love piece is popular, and it's known for the element of balance. We'll bring that up again. So if you look at that, it's a perfectly balanced piece. The way that the letters are stacked 2 by 2 on top of each other, it allows for perfect balance. And a lot of his work also involves squares around circles, and at times could be very easily conveyed as advertisements. Indiana's work's mostly balanced and unified, also focusing on color contrasts. And like you could see in some of his other pieces of art, the greens and reds and blacks and yellows. And then today, this is what Robert Indiana looks like. He is 89 years old, and he lives in a little sleepy town off the coast of Maine on a little island, and that's where he's been for quite some time now. And I really enjoyed getting to learn more about this. The reason I chose this artist is when I went on a trip to New York City, I noticed the love piece, and it's something that's always kind of stuck with me. But I didn't know who created it, so when we got this assignment, I started doing some research and really enjoyed getting to know about him and his life and how this all started. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Thanks. Bye.